The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
In another move toward total and complete authoritarianism, the Trump White House has gone completely back on what White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer previously said about blocking media access, and decided to block media access to media outlets they don't like at a recent gaggle in Sean Spicer's office. And we have the leaked audio confirming the real goal here. White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer barred reporters from a number of large media outlets from participating in this scheduled press gaggle on Friday. As a reminder, 2 months ago in a panel discussion, Sean Spicer insisted that open access for the media is, quote, what makes a democracy versus a dictatorship, by his own definition, doing something that makes us more of a dictatorship. Sean Spicer said the administration would also not be banning individual outlets not long ago. Remember this?
Said, I think that that's not going to happen.
Well, I think, look, there's a big difference between a campaign where it is a private venue using private funds and a government entity. And I think we have a respect for the press when it comes to the government, that is something that you can't ban an entity from. Conservative, liberal, or otherwise. I think that's what makes a democracy versus a dictatorship.
Flip-flop, doesn't matter. Trumpists don't care. They rationalize it because they believe Trump, that the media is really bad right now, folks, tremendously bad. Look at who was in and who was out of this off-camera gaggle in Spicer's office. Out, Politico, CNN, New York Times, BuzzFeed, LA Times, Daily Mail. Well, okay, that one maybe makes sense. The Hill, New York Daily News, and BBC. AP and Time boycotted the gaggle in defense and solidarity with the banned outlets. However, a number of right-wing propaganda news outlets, Breitbart, One America News, check that one out, by the way, if you have the tolerance for it, the Washington Times, were in, oh no, it's not ideological, until the audio leaks, which makes it abundantly clear that certain media outlets were intentionally excluded for ideological reasons. Check it out.
Are CNN and the New York Times not in here right now because you're unhappy with their reporting? No, and why are they not in here?
Because we had a pool and then we expanded it and we added some folks to come cover it.
But there's enough room for others.
It was my decision to decide, to expand the pool.
We're going to aggressively push back.
We're just not going to sit back and let, false narratives, false stories, inaccurate facts get out there.
And there it is. This is a pushback against what they call a false narrative and false stories. This is dangerous, and I hate to tell you, if you're waiting around for the Trumpists to wake up and realize this is all an authoritarian nightmare, Pat, you need to stop waiting because it's not going to happen. Some of them are what's called in poker pot committed. They've invested enough in what's happening that they're not getting out, even if they're deep down starting to have doubts. And then others are falling for the alternate reality that Trump has built, where you can only trust him, you need to be tough with media, blah, blah, blah. This is how nuts the situation is.
You got to love how Sean Spicer was trying to make it seem like it was about semantics, that they weren't going to be able to fit all those people in that room. And then eventually, when pressed, he got to the real issue, that he didn't want misinformation to get spread out to the public. This is coming from Sean Spicer, the guy who started his job as press secretary by claiming that Trump's inauguration was the biggest in presidential history.
Yeah, it's absolutely pathetic. And I like that reporter said, but there's plenty of room in here. I mean, the office isn't even nearly full. And to further illustrate how insane the situation is, Fox News' Shep Smith is again standing up to Trump. Fox News, that's right, that's what I said, saying CNN isn't fake news and the Trumpists still don't care. A bizarre, fact-free loyalty has been created by Trump that's somehow exceeding Fox News' right-wing loyalty. Check this out.
This all came to a head after a series of events. First, CNN reported extensively on Trump campaign officials' communications with Russia. Then CNN reports the White House chief of staff sent administration officials to talk to reporters off the record, urging them to knock down the Trump campaign and Russia reports. Then this morning, President Trump again called the fake news media the enemy of the people and railed against fake news.
I want you all to know that we are fighting the fake news. It's fake, phony, fake. A few days ago, I called the fake news the enemy of the people, and they are. They are the enemy of the people. Because they have no sources, they just make them up when there are none.
He later said he was referring to the Washington Post, which reports it had 9 sources on its report. The president said flatly he doesn't believe them. For the record, fake news refers to stories that are created, often by entities pretending to be news organizations, solely to draw clicks and views and are based on nothing of substance. In short, fake news is made-up nonsense delivered for financial gain. CNN's reporting was not fake news. Its journalists follow the same standards to which other news organizations, including Fox News, adhere. Senior administration officials regularly speak without attribution so that the public can be informed of what our government is doing.
It wasn't just Shep Smith, also Brett Baer from Fox News saying banning these outlets from the gaggle was absolutely incorrect. If you're an administration with nothing to hide and you run your entire campaign on the clearly bogus but often repeated promise of transparency, banning the media outlets that do investigative news and aren't and then allowing the ones that fawn over you doesn't exactly communicate transparency. We need to get beyond the fact that everything is a lie, because that's not going to change. They lied their way into office. They lied their way through month 1. But this also has another goal, which is to cultivate a sort of special relationship with the right-wing propaganda press so that they'll do Trump's bidding. When Trump calls, they will do it, no doubt. And as we learned last week, it worked when Trump's staff would plant news to counter Trump's Twitter meltdowns. Very dangerous.
Well, it's good to see that the more legitimate media sources, not the right-wing propaganda machine, are standing together with CNN and the rest of the media outlets that were banned from this meeting. Because I think they realize they could be the next to go. I mean, if they are critical in any way of the Trump administration, they could reach the same fate.
All media outlets, other than propaganda ones that are just planning to fawn over Trump for the next 4 years, should be worried about this, because that line could be drawn on one side of you or the other at any time. After much controversy and expectations, former Labor Secretary Tom Perez was elected chair of the Democratic National Committee on Saturday, replacing the disgraced interim chair, Donna Brazile, who herself replaced the disgraced 5-year chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Contentious race. The strongest challenger was Congressman Keith Ellison. Keith Ellison ultimately defeated by Tom Perez 235 to 200. Many Bernie supporters horrified. This exposed some divisions. The idea was that the Bernie side of the party supported Keith Ellison. The establishment side, or as I like to call it, the Democrats Incorporated side, the business side of the Democrats, were with Tom Perez. Is that completely accurate? Not really, but it at least gives us a frame to start thinking about it. But I need to warn you here. I have concerns about this decision for Democrats, but the Trump administration's move now is going to be to create more infighting between the progressive wing and the establishment wing of the Democratic Party. Don't fall for this. Trump actually tweeted after the election results, the race for DNC chairman was, of course, totally rigged. Bernie's guy, like Bernie himself, never had a chance. Clinton demanded Perez. So we can be critical of the decision by the DNC without jumping to what Trump is doing, which is only going to further hurt Democrats. The truth is that ideologically, Tom Perez and Keith Ellison are almost identical. We know that they're close friends. My friend No Mickey Const recently saw them having dinner together at a D.C. restaurant. The political differences are not what's important. What's different is this is about whether Democrats continue the direction of Democrats Incorporated, meaning raise money, recruit candidates, represent Democrats in the media, continue the big political consulting contracts, or do we go in the direction of a more Bernie Sanders message, which may have actually defeated Trump. So I think that this is significant, but not because of ideological differences between Perez and Ellison that, quite frankly, I don't think exist.
Well, I think it's significant because it gives a message that the Democrats are going to continue on this centrist establishment way.
Republican light, you could call it.
You could. And I mean, really, the fact that Hillary Clinton lost this election to the most unpopular presidential candidate of all time, and then the past DNC chair, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, was playing favorites, Donna Brazile was playing favorites. I mean, you could argue that they should just give it to the Bernie progressive wing of the party as if it's their turn now.
That, I think, is the real reason why Keith Ellison announced he was running, I think it was like November 15th, very shortly after the election. About a month later, Tom Perez announced that he was running. We know that he was sort of recruited to run by the Obama administration. There are 18 different emails in the John Podesta WikiLeaks emails between Podesta and Perez, which show that they were very, very tied in. And what I think this is really about is it's not about the politics of Ellison and Perez. It's about ensuring or attempting to prevent the Bernie wing of the Democratic Party from having influence. And that, I think, is what you're getting at, Pat. That is absolutely spot on here. And we are going to need to really think about whether this is a party that, by making this decision, has committed to losing, I don't know for how long. I hope that's not the case, because the Republican Party under Trump has become more unhinged than in a very, very long time. But I do not believe that this is the right decision. This doesn't mean that I support or defend everything that Keith Ellison has said, done, and stood for. We could analyze that piece by piece, but it is more about the idea of Tom Perez over Keith Ellison and the aspects of the Democratic Party that they represent. We have now learned that the Trump White House recently privately asked the FBI to denounce news stories on the ties between Russia and the Donald Trump team, and the FBI said no. The White House asked the FBI and other intelligence agencies to publicly say there has been no contact between White House staff and Russia. This would be a lie, of course. The White House asked multiple intelligence agencies to flat out lie. And aside from being a request to lie, the request itself is a violation of Justice Department rules, which prohibit communication with the FBI about and related to pending investigations. There's a very clear rule about that. A White House official has now said that Reince Priebus privately asked FBI Director James Comey for the FBI to leak info to reporters that the White House doesn't have ties with Russia. As you probably have realized, Comey and the FBI didn't go along with that. Immediately, Trumpists are calling this fake news, but of course what that means is it's news that they don't agree with, that they don't like. The White House originally denied that they made the request, but eventually they admitted that they made the request when Press Secretary Sean Spicer said, quote, "We didn't try to knock the story down, we asked them to tell the truth." Of course, that wouldn't be the truth, since there are endless connections between Trump and Russia that have now been confirmed. The FBI was asked to comment about this situation. They didn't. It's funny how all of a sudden, Pat, the FBI doesn't comment. It no longer relates to Hillary Clinton's emails weeks before the election, so now the FBI doesn't comment. Hey, everybody, wake up. Not only is there growing evidence that Trump staffers have been in contact with Russia, now they're trying to corruptly use law enforcement and intelligence agencies to cover it up. And still, many Trumpists say, nothing to see here.
Well, it definitely is a double standard here, but I think it's just hilarious how the Trump administration would think that they'd be able to stop the FBI from conducting this investigation, because they've been doing this since the summer. I'm sure there's a ton of manpower and resources devoted to this. And yes, they are part of the executive branch, but I mean, you'd like to think that the intelligence community has some independence from the president. So of course, they're going to continue on this investigation, and who knows what the results will be.
If there is a silver lining, it maybe is that the FBI didn't appease them and rejected this request. Maybe Comey and the FBI are taking into account Trump's bad-mouthing of the FBI and intelligence agencies. And what Pat is alluding to is right. As I've said it before, it's abundantly clear that both, quote, the media and intelligence agencies have a lot of really damaging stuff about Donald Trump. It doesn't seem like a pragmatically smart idea to go to war with media and intelligence agencies when they have a lot of information there that could really end up screwing you. It may not. It may not, because we have, as I mentioned, so many Trumpists pot committed, as I called it, to the Trump regime. But guys, don't forget that Bill Clinton met with Loretta Lynch on an airport tarmac once during the campaign. That's the real scandal. Or Hillary Clinton's emails, or maybe Benghazi, if you're more of a nostalgic individual who likes to go back to the earlier scandals of the election. Send me your thoughts about this. I'm on Twitter at dpacman. We are on Twitter as a show at David Pakman Show, and we'll be back right after this.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Today's new member of the day is Oliver Note. Oliver, thank you for being a David Pakman Show member. This is a program that depends directly on you, listeners, viewers, to fund the production of the David Pakman Show. We have had a record month, more than doubling our prior single month new member high watermark in February. I will announce the final numbers maybe later this week once we've tallied, crossed all of our T's and dotted all of our I's, as producer Pat likes to tell me every morning. DavidPakman.com/membership. The coupon code IVoted17 is still available. And if you ever shop on Amazon.com, you can use the link DavidPakman.com/Amazon to support the show with all of the shopping that you do. Donald Trump spoke at CPAC late last week, the Conservative Political Action Conference. In the speech, he said that media should not be allowed to use anonymous sources. Here's what he said.
But I am only against the fake news media or press. Fake. They have to leave that word. I'm against the people that make up stories and make up sources. They shouldn't be allowed to use sources unless they use somebody's name. Let their name be put out there. Let their name be put out.
This is incredibly dangerous. Now, my analysis that follows is only for the thinking people, okay? If you're a low information Trumpist, just skip the rest of the story. It's not going to resonate for you. It's not going to matter. We know too many Trumpists are committed to this abortion of an administration no matter what. But here is the analysis for the thinking people. Trump says no anonymous sources. They're bad, they're terrible, they're the worst. The Hillary Clinton emails came from anonymous sources. At least for a while they were anonymous, and Trump loved it, arguably won because of it. Talked about the contents of those anonymously leaked documents all the time. The entire birther lunacy about Barack Obama that Trump trumped for years was based on unknown sources. Trump saying endlessly, a lot of people don't think that the birth certificate is authentic. He himself tweeted about it, saying, for example, an extremely credible source has called my office and told me that Barack Obama's birth certificate is a fraud. Anonymous source. Another anonymous source tweet from Trump. Sources inside Attorney General Schneiderman's office are saying that they are very concerned with the allegations against their lightweight boss. I could go on all day. Let's pretend I gave you 10 more examples of Trump referencing anonymous sources. You get the point. I want to get to the key issue. This entire fake news and anonymous sources and the media is bad thing is incredibly serious because it's creating a really dangerous pretext. I was thinking about this over the weekend. It's been widely discussed how absurd it is that Trump, referring to the Russia leaks, claiming the leaks are real, but the news is fake, without explaining the difference. What is fake news and what is a leak? Leaks are illegal by law, right? This is why people like Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden get charged with crimes. The sharing of information that they're forbidden from sharing. Now, whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't matter. The law is what matters in these cases. Chelsea Manning exposed crimes, so I believe that Manning really is a whistleblower of crimes, not a leaker. On the other hand, Edward Snowden exposed deplorable and faulty policy that was not criminal by statute, but these are, in the sort of general sense, leaks, okay? Donald Trump says the media shouldn't be allowed to use anonymous sources. This is priming, and I've used the term before. Donald Trump is priming his base to, in their low information confusion, equate journalists who use anonymous sources with leakers who are committing crimes. I can't imagine Trump came up with this, Pat. It sounds much more the likes of Steve Bannon because it's evil genius in many ways. If you blur the lines between leakers and journalists using anonymous sources, a widely accepted practice in journalism history, reporters will not want to report on something when their own name is on the line and be subjected to prosecution or persecution, and the leakers themselves will be less willing to talk to the press because the press will want to name them as sources so that they wouldn't compromise themselves if there's this anti-anonymous source mentality. What Donald Trump is doing by blurring these lines is very dangerous, particularly when you know and I know, some of our audience knows, some of it doesn't because they don't care to know about it, that this is a deliberate attempt to blur the lines between anonymous sources that are informing journalists and the act of illegally leaking private and classified information.
I think we also need to understand what he means when he says they shouldn't be allowed to report on anonymous sources.
Yeah.
Because that could mean anything from they should have higher journalistic standards and the media outlets should have this policy where they don't allow anonymous sources.
To lawsuits.
Or it could be lawsuits, the
or
government
jail.
cracking down on anonymous sources. And it's just one of those instances where Trump being vague does a real disservice to the American public.
And the vagueness, Trump may be vague because he's clueless, but the vagueness of whoever came up with this idea, whether it's Bannon or whoever, of starting to blur the lines between anonymous journalism sources and leakers, that's part of what makes it so dangerous, okay? So don't get confused. Trump probably is clueless about this, but either way, he's pushing a very, very dangerous narrative, a blurring of lines that we should all be very worried about. Hey, this is just the best. This is brilliantly subtle trolling by someone that actually we know. During Donald Trump's speech at CPAC on Friday, a lot of attendees were spotted on camera waving flags that said Trump on them. And if you look at the flags, and for our TV audience, we'll show you a few of the pictures of people holding these flags at CPAC. These were presumably Trump supporters and conservatives waving these Trump flags. Turns out that these were Russian flags. A pair of anti-Trump activists named Ryan Clayton, who I know personally and actually spoke to not that long ago, and also Jason Charter, actually handed out these flags at CPAC and told people to take them out and wave them during the Trump speech. And CPAC staff quickly ran around to confiscate them from everyone. You actually also have pictures that we're showing you of staffers coming around and grabbing these flags. Yes, these flags were red, white, and blue, but they were the Russian red, white, and blue flags, not the American red, white, and blue flags. Obviously, these Trump supporters were some combination of naive and clueless that these were Russian flags. Many Trumpists wouldn't know a Russian flag if it hit them in the face. And at the moment that the flags were being confiscated, Donald Trump was actually in the middle of his speech talking about how the entire Flynn Russia thing was because of fake news. I don't know if we can call that symbolic or poetic or ironic or whatever. Here's a little video of Ryan Clayton being interviewed at CPAC. He was interviewed by some right-wing group about Milo Yiannopoulos his invitation being rescinded by CPAC. And this is just the best. He's holding the flag and goes into a fake Russian accent. And it's just so funny, hilariously subtle trolling.
Hi, this is Jennifer Lawrence with the America First Project. We're standing here with Ryan, who has very interesting Trump flags. So you understand CPAC is a private institution. They can ban whoever they want. Do you personally support their decision to ban Milo from speaking?
Nostrovia! I'm so excited to be in America for Trump celebration. He's a great man, like President Putin. Putin helped pick him for American because they need leader like Putin in America too. And that is why Trump is great. Trump, Trump, Trump. USA, USSR, Russia. Yeah, Putin, Nostrovia!
I know some people think that this entire thing is very silly, but to infiltrate in this way, to be interviewed and then to pretend to be some Russian guy who loves Trump, to hand out Russian flags, which Trump supporters are too clueless to realize are Russian flags, this is amazing.
And if you keep watching this video, the reporter there, Jennifer Lawrence, not the actress, keeps trying to press him and expose him as a fake by asking, why are you speaking English with a Russian accent? All these strange questions. You're not going to be able to pin him down. You're not going to be able to win this exchange. You should probably just walk away at that point.
Yeah, and it did not go particularly well for her if you check out the rest of the interview. I am kind of surprised that he wasn't stopped or kicked out while handing out the flags. He wasn't keeping a particularly low profile, as this interview suggests. I don't know what exactly the security situation was at CPAC, the organization, but ultimately, at the point at which Trump got to talking about Russia during the speech, these staffers figured out, hey, maybe we don't want the Russian flags out there. I have an endlessly, utterly, completely amazing story for you. Fox News had a fake Swedish defense advisor on to talk about Donald Trump's fake Swedish terrorist attack comment. This is stunningly epic. Now, as a reminder, Donald Trump recently referred to, quote, what happened in Sweden, some kind of terrorist attack or violence or something, which of course didn't exist. Okay, here's Trump talking about that recently.
You look at what's happening in Germany. You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. Sweden. Who would believe this? Sweden. They took in large numbers. They're having problems like they never thought possible.
So that never happened. Ultimately, Trump tweeted that he heard about the story from none other than Fox News, and we showed you that tweet when we covered the story last week. So what happens next? Fox News, specifically Bill O'Reilly, decides to follow up on this big story, blah, blah, blah. So they bring on a guy by the name of Nils Bildt, captioned on the O'Reilly Factor as a Swedish defense and national security advisor. Okay, you can see that if you're watching here. This is the way that Nils Bildt was presented on Fox News' O'Reilly Factor. The guy was fake. Swedish military and foreign affairs officials, actual ones from Sweden, said they have no idea who this guy is. They've never heard of him. They know nothing about him. Of course, Bildt showed up and did what we all expected him to do, linked immigration to crime and social problems in Sweden, was sad about what he described as Swedish liberal close-mindedness, about the downsides of welcoming newcomers. He said, quote, we are unable in Sweden to socially integrate these people. And then it all fell apart. Swedish Defense Ministry and the Swedish Defense Ministry and Foreign Office told the newspaper Dagens Nyheter they know nothing of Bildt. We have a quote from Swedish Defense University leadership professor Robert Agnell, who said he is not in any way a known quantity in Sweden and has never been part of the Swedish debate. Johan Wiktorin, an actual Swedish intelligence and security advisor, said he's never heard of Nils Bildt. Bildt didn't respond on Saturday to email inquiries, but someone who picked up the phone at his company agreed to relay a message telling Dagens Nyheter, the newspaper, on Friday, that Nils Bildt was a U.S.-based independent analyst and that it was Fox News who chose to describe him as a Swedish defense and national security advisor. Fox News said Bill O'Reilly is expected to address this further on tonight's program. Even better than whatever his title is, reports suggest that Nils Bildt hasn't been in Sweden for nearly 25 years. What on earth does he even know about this? What do you think? We'll get a retraction and apology from Fox News?
Maybe. They're often very reluctant to apologize or retract anything. I mean, when you watch this interview, it kind of seems like maybe the guy is choosing his words very deliberately, speaking very slowly, and that may come across as if he's like an intellectual, or at least like a pseudo-intellectual.
Careful guy.
But maybe now we just realize he didn't know what he was talking about at all.
The damage is done, though, right? I mean, like when Kellyanne Conway showed up and talked about the Bowling Green massacre committed by Iraqi refugees, which was totally made up. People believed it. They integrated it into their sort of general understanding of the situation. They act as if it's real. And that probably also is a factor when it comes to Nils Bildt. But hey, if you're worried, don't worry. Any day now, we're going to get leaks from an anonymous source, which of course Trump is against, unless it's good for him, which will confirm that Fox News is actually great and reliable, but CNN is the fake news.
Well, they obviously just brought this guy on to give some validation to Donald Trump's assertions.
Yeah.
And some things that he says, I mean, you can kind of leave that up for debate, but there so clearly was not a terrorist attack in Sweden that day. I mean, how are you able to even argue that?
And not to mention, this guy clearly is not what his title on screen claims him to be, a Swedish defense and national security advisor. Is this the first fake guest of 2017 that we've seen?
Maybe that we've seen. Absolutely, yeah.
Discuss this with us on our Reddit discussion forum, davidpakman.com/Reddit. That's REDDIT. Nearly 3,000 of our viewers and listeners now participating on our Reddit discussion forum. A lot of good stuff. A lot of scandals related to Pat, actually, on our Reddit discussion forum. One related to coffee. And, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening on
Almost as many scandals as the Trump administration.
Yeah, Pat has almost as many scandals in 2017 as Trump does, which is shocking because Trump has a lot. DavidPakman.com/Reddit. We'll take a break. Attorney Mike Papantonio joins me next.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
It's great to be joined today by attorney Mike Papantonio, co-host of Ring of Fire Radio. Pap, Dupont and its spin-off company are going to be paying $921 million to 3,500 plaintiffs. This is all about a toxic chemical known as C8, which is used during the manufacture of Teflon. Many people know Teflon as that non-stick coating on cooking implements. How'd you first hear about what was going on with C8?
Yeah, well, my specialty, as you probably know, David, is to try cases. I was brought in as the trial lawyer to try the first 3 or 4 test cases. Before then, it had been worked up against completely unbelievable odds. The lawyers there around the Ohio Valley did an incredible job with no help from the media, no help from the government, no help from the DOJ at all. They did it single-handedly. As a matter of fact, there was actually pushback all along the way by the government, who simply didn't want this story told. The EPA had really dropped the ball. Department of Justice, as usual, had done nothing to investigate or prosecute the people who were responsible. So what ended up happening is it was just a long slog. That's the best way I can describe it.
In your research, how far back was it revealed that DuPont knew about the health risks that were posed by C8?
Well, they knew about health risks as early as the mid-'60s. They were performing tests on lab animals of every kind, everything from monkeys to beagles to rats, and all of the tests were bad. All of the tests showed bad health effects. So they knew right off the bat, but by 1980s, they were already warning their own employees that C8 could cause cancer. The problem was they weren't telling the American public that C8 could cause cancer. They weren't telling the people that were drinking the C8 water every day that it would cause cancer. People were having to drink C8 contaminated water. They were showering with it. They were preparing baby bottles with it. They used it every part of their life. It was a contamination level that brought up the C8 blood contamination in these people, incredible amounts. I mean, sometimes 50 times what it should have been. There should be no C-level C8 in anybody's blood. It's man-made. It shouldn't be there. But it was all over these people's lives, as it is in a lot of parts throughout this country. A lot of places in this country, right here in my hometown of Pensacola, they've got C8 in the drinking water. Well, it shouldn't be there. It's man-made.
As far as the distribution of the plaintiffs, some in our audience probably know about how in Texas there are those 5-gallon office water cooler water jugs. It's like a thick plastic. There's pollution that comes from the factories where those are produced that is very, very harmful to human health, carcinogenic. And when you look at what towns are sort of mostly affected by that pollution, it's poor towns, it's disproportionately non-white towns. What kind of analysis can we make along those lines to the 3,500 plaintiffs involved here? Is there also a class story behind it?
There absolutely is. What happened was you had corporate America move into the South. They came in like corporate carpetbaggers. They knew people would work for low wages. They knew that people wouldn't be concerned about the environment if they were being paid decent money because they had to make a living. They had to take care of their family. People were willing to make that trade-off. You'd often hear claims, no matter how bad the pollution was in the South, you'd always hear some locals saying, well, it smells like money to me, even though it was pollution that was potentially killing their children. And so what ended up happening was you'll find this area in the South, this Gulf Coast area, the pollution is extraordinary because all corporate America knew they could come down here, pay low wages, not worry about the environment. They could externalize all of their poison all over the community and then leave town when it was all over.
So talk to us a little bit about the trial. I mean, I'm always fascinated to hear what case corporate defense counsel attempts to make to distract or reject the allegations of liability here. What case did they try to make here?
Well, the case was that they didn't know. It was, gee, how could we have known? Well, all they had to do was read their own documents. I think the jury was moved by the idea that every trial they would hear the defendant stand up, they'd hear Dupont stand up in the beginning and say, gee, we just didn't know. If we would have known this wouldn't have happened. And then within 15 minutes in the trial, they're seeing dozens and dozens of documents that were hidden from the American public, hidden from the EPA, where it was very clear that they did know, and their intent was to continue what they were doing anyway for 50 years because they were making so much profit on Teflon. So that's the defense, and anytime you wage a defense like that, and then almost immediately that defense is crushed by the documents themselves, the testimony themselves, it's very, very tough to overcome. That's why juries punished them. Juries felt that they showed a conscious disregard for the health and safety of people all along the Ohio River Valley. And so, they were getting ready to be hit in the fourth trial for, an extraordinary amount of money. But the first trial started off with one of the minor cases that, by the way, they picked. This is the one they wanted to test. This is the one they wanted to try. And I think it was 1.8 million. Second was 5.7 million. Third was 12.9 million, something like that. So it just kept getting worse and worse for them. And they did what they should have done, which is to close this down. The reason it wasn't done soon enough is because the media did not do their job. Had the media done their job and told the story that should have been told, this would have happened much sooner. But you have an American media that they're ordered to do what they do by their advertisers. And if DuPont or Dow Chemical, who was getting ready to merge with DuPont, put pressure on the media, then they won't do their job. We no longer have a functional media. This case is the best example of that, David. This case is a case that should have gone away years ago, but the story would never be told on ABC, NBC, CBS, MSNBC, none of the corporate media, because they simply don't do their job. It is a worthless source of information anymore.
Sometimes when settlements like this are reached, there's sort of a line in the sand drawn where there can be no more plaintiffs or litigation going forward. Is that the case here, or can there be more plaintiffs brought into this?
No, there's 70,000 people affected by this. This settlement only has to do with about 3,000 people are going to become ill as time goes on. This is the product that is in their blood, stays in their blood, David, for 25 years. It's in the environment for 2 million years. You can't get rid of it. You can't get rid of it in anybody's blood. You can't chelate it. It's there. It's going to stay there for 25 years. Unfortunately, as it stays there, the risk of thyroid disease, cancer, just as dramatically increased, testicular cancer, kidney cancer. And so this is what these people are facing. So going forward, this settlement in no way precludes people from being able to protect themselves in the future.
Well, we've been following it. We're going to continue following it. We've been speaking with attorney Mike Papantonio, co-host of Ring of Fire Radio, also host of America's Lawyer on RT. Always great to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
The White House has a major leak problem. Let me first talk generally about it. So in general, when you get White House leaks, you get them sporadically, and usually they're meant to help the leakers maybe gain power out of self-interest. So you might have a White House staffer that leaks something with the sort of general goal of maybe helping themselves in some way by discrediting a White House staffer or something like that. In the Trump era, just in the first 5 weeks of the administration, we're seeing leaks that very clearly are happening because some administrative staffers are just genuinely horrified by what's going on in the Trump administration. And as a result, Sean Spicer, call him a regular old Sherlock Holmes, started an investigation into who might be leaking stuff from the Trump administration. And Spicer warned White House officials not to leak the fact that he was running an investigation into leaks to the media. In other words, he wanted to keep the leak investigation private. It was almost immediately leaked. Spicer's investigation into leaks was leaked And it's endlessly hilarious. Spicer reportedly held a surprise search of staffer phones to try to find leakers. And he called people into his office. He said that they had to leave their phones and mobile devices on a table to be searched to ensure that nobody has anything to hide. Almost immediately, countless stories pop up on social media about how Sean Spicer is trying to find leakers. Spicer was asked to comment about the leaked story, about the leaked meeting, the subject of which was finding leakers and stopping leaks. He didn't want to comment about that. How great is this? Spicer calls staffers in for a meeting to complain about leaks, and then news of the meeting is leaked. It's like playing whack-a-mole, where you're trying to slam down moles as they pop up, the carnival game, and then another one just pops up, and you try to slam down leaks, and then leaks about the leaks are just popping up. I love it.
I mean, can we really be surprised, though? This is the guy who tweeted out his password, not once, but twice. I didn't even know that was really possible. I got to believe Sean Spicer is the next to go in the Trump administration. I think he's on the chopping block.
I think it's been clear from the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, to embarrass the Trump administration is a hard task, and I think he's doing a good job of it.
You couldn't do a Saturday Night Live parody of this because it's a parody of itself. Like, what detail could you change if you were to parody a leaked investigation into leaks? And it's pretty clear why people are leaking, right? Not only are people scared about what's going on, but it appears that Spicer is a true nightmare to work with. And as part of the report on the leak investigation, it was also reported that during a recent staff meeting, Spicer started really aggressively criticizing the work of Deputy Communications Director Jessica Ditto. And it caused her to just start crying, according to two people familiar with the incident. I get the sense that maybe Sean Spicer is putting his failings on other people, because you're right, he's been an absolute train wreck.
I mean, he seems like a bully who is also bullied himself. And in this case, he's, attacking the people below him, but also getting blowback from Trump himself.
The entire calling people in to start checking who might be leaking and say, don't leak the leak investigation. It struck me as epitomizing that often repeated, I don't even know what it is at this point, phrase, quote, the beatings will continue until morale improves. That strikes me as the sort of MO of Sean Spicer in some way. And I don't see things as, I guess that's where I come down on it, which is, it's hard to imagine things getting much better within the Sean Spicer press world of the Trump White House with Sean Spicer still there. Doesn't it feel like it's just irrecoverable at this point unless you replace Spicer with someone else?
I think it was from the first day. I mean, how do you go out in the first day and you talk about the inauguration crowd size and get the numbers completely wrong and then don't take any questions and leave? You can't even recover from that.
Yeah, he didn't lie as well as Trump wanted him to. Trump wanted him to go out there and somehow convince people that he had record turnout at his inauguration. And then Trump was displeased with the job that Sean Spicer did, blatantly lying to the public. If you send the guy out to blatantly lie about verifiable facts, how well could the guy possibly do? It was sort of he was set up to fail by Trump.
Kellyanne Conway does a good job of it.
Yeah, that's true. She seems to, although she's missing. She's nowhere to be found since the Bowling Green massacre debacle. Hey, most Americans want an investigation into Trump-Russia connections. There's a new NBC Wall Street Journal poll which found that 53% of Americans agreed that Congress should investigate contact between Russia and President Donald Trump's team. 25% of those who responded to this poll believe that Congress should stay out of it, and 21% didn't have an opinion. Highly partisan. 80% of Democrats thought that Russia ties should be investigated. 25% of Republicans believed that Russia ties should be investigated. Basically identical numbers when asked whether Congress should investigate Russia's attempts to interfere in the election generally. 54% of Americans agreed, 29% did not. These right-wingers, the blind Trumpists, don't they need to start thinking as Americans rather than as Republicans or Democrats? I was hugely critical of the references to the World War II nativist talking point of America First when Trump used it at his inauguration speech. But if you do want to think about putting America at the top of your sort of list of priorities, don't you have to put aside partisanship and realize that this is something very serious that should be investigated.
Especially because this investigation would just bring out new information. I mean, who could possibly be opposed to that? Even if you're a Trump supporter, you want to have that. And it's nothing like Benghazi, I would say, because they had 9 different investigations into Benghazi.
Yeah.
We're only looking for one here.
Obama was a Russian communist with no evidence. Russia was the worst when Mitt Romney said it in 2012, the biggest threat. All of a sudden, now that we have mountains of evidence about Russia being involved with Donald Trump and with our elections, now all of a sudden Russia's fine. Stop the Red Scare, you lefties. Russia's no problem whatsoever. And by the way, if it emerged that Barack Obama had potentially been compromised by the Russians, you would not have 25% of the population blindly supporting Obama. You just wouldn't. And it's gone beyond being cult-like. I've actually met a couple of people, Pat, who would probably be in that 25%, and they rationalize the entire Russia-Trump thing away with phrases like, let's let the president do his job, or why does everything in Washington have to be an argument or a disagreement or a debate? These happen to be the same people who desperately want to see President Obama's or wanted to see President Obama's birth certificate, and then once it was released, they said they didn't believe that the birth certificate was legitimate. The difference, of course, was that there was never any actual evidence that President Obama wasn't born in the U.S., and we have binders full of evidence that Trump and Russia are bigly connected.
If you think the supporters are playing politics, the politicians definitely are. I mean, look at Jason Chaffetz, who is the investigator-in-chief, you could say, looked into all of these different things that Hillary Clinton potentially committed.
Yeah.
Trump, he's not even going to touch him.
And last week, we actually said that in the midst of the Russia craziness, Jason Chaffetz has decided to open an investigation into some national park's Twitter account. But hey, we don't have to worry about what's going on here. 2000 to 2008, Republicans were saying, hey, we just have to listen and follow what George W. Bush is doing. I mean, he is the president after all. Let's respect the office of the president. 2008 to 2016, or I guess 2009 to 2017, if you want to be technical about it. F. Obama, he's a foreigner, his birth certificate's fake, he's a Kenyan, Indonesian, British, Muslim terrorist. Donald Trump is inaugurated January 20th of 2017. Hey, listen, we just have to listen respectfully to what Donald Trump says. He is the president after all. We have to respect the office of the president. Bogus. Absolutely and utterly bogus. Make sure to discuss these stories or any others that you're interested in on our Reddit discussion forum at davidpakman.com/Reddit. Also, please, please, please follow me on Instagram. I am on Instagram at david.pakman. And a lot happening on that Instagram page. On the bonus show today, I think people are going to be interested in this story, Pat. Over the weekend, there was a David Pakman show sort of gathering, which we can talk about on the bonus show. And afterwards, Pat and I and a couple of other people witnessed what I would consider a relatively major car accident. I've actually not witnessed, I've seen, like driving by the highway, bigger car accidents, but I've never seen this level of a car accident happen in front of me.
Right. I mean, I've been in car accidents, never caused by me, I might add.
That's good.
But I've never gone by and seen 2 other cars, or one car in this case, crash in any way.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the action I took, and we're going to also talk about Pat's skepticism about the action that I decided to take in reaction to this car accident that we saw. Also, SpaceX, Elon Musk of SpaceX fame, has teased an announcement that we would be getting tomorrow from SpaceX. I have speculation about what it might be. We will see if Pat agrees. We will see if the audience agrees. How do you get access to the bonus show? It's quite simple, really. All David Pakman Show members, regardless of whether you sign up at full price or at a discounted price, get instant access to all of the member benefits, which include the bonus show, as well as the commercial-free audio and video streams of the show, and lots of other great member benefits. To sign up, here's how you do it. davidpakman.com/membership. We have monthly memberships. We have yearly memberships. This is the #1 funding source for the show. If you don't want to pay full price, we have a coupon code available for you. That coupon code is all one word, all lowercase, I voted 17. You select any membership you want at davidpakman.com/membership. And then after clicking the sign up button, you will have the opportunity to enter a coupon code. And that coupon code is I voted 17. And it will give you, I don't think it's an exaggeration, Pat, to call it a big league discount off of membership. I'm comfortable saying that.
That's good. It's very good.
All right, Pat seems comfortable as well, which is good. We don't want to have a lack of comfort.
That's easy to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Pat seems pretty comfortable with it. Okay, so please sign up. Great bonus show today. Bonus shows are happening. We will talk to you then or on tomorrow's program.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.